Welcome to the Courage, Coaching, and Counseling Podcast with Savon Penn, licensed professional counselor here in Portland, Oregon. Wherever you're at in life, this podcast will inspire and encourage you to be more brave in life and take the next best step between where you are and where you want to be. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This episode's a little different. I plugged in some excerpts from unpublished book on Blackbelt Parenting, Jiu-Jitsu principles and how they apply to relationships and parenting. And I plugged it into Google Notebook, and it's an amazing AI tool. And it created an interactive podcast between two AI hosts. I kind of summarized some of the principles from the book. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're tackling something I think is really fascinating. It's this idea of what if we looked at parenting through the lens of martial arts?
Okay.
Now, before anyone pictures, dads teaching toddlers to roundhouse kick.
Right.
We're talking about something much deeper than that.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from two books here, Blackbelt Parenting and The War of Parenting. And both of them are suggesting that there's this really kind of surprising amount of wisdom that we can borrow from the dojo and apply to the, shall we say, the more lively bouts of family life.
I love that. I think that's such a, it is fascinating how both these books kind of make that connection, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about turning our homes into, fight clubs or anything, but it's really about, adopting that mindset, the discipline and that strategic thinking that you find in martial arts.
Right. And I think both books kind of kick off with this idea of parenting as a kind of arena, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, some days that feels pretty accurate.
Oh, yeah.
But what do they really mean by this? Like, what are they getting at with this metaphor?
Well, I think one of the key points that they make is that, stepping into that parenting arena, so to speak, just like stepping onto the mat, it requires a certain humility.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
We will make mistakes and that we need to be open to, learning and adapting as we go.
Yeah. And that is a huge mind shift, I think, for a lot of us, right? Because we come to parenting a lot of times with all this pressure to be perfect, to have it all figured out.
Yeah. It's that classic good enough versus great dilemma. Mm-hmm. And, these books are arguing that, striving for great parenting doesn't necessarily mean demanding perfection from our kids.
Okay.
But it's more about, that commitment to personal growth as a parent.
Yeah.
Just like, a martial artist wouldn't expect to master some complex, technique overnight.
Right.
We need to kind of be patient with ourselves and embrace the process.
So it's not about just throwing ourselves into the parenting equivalent of the octagon right away.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Both martial arts and parenting.
Yeah.
They require us to master those basics.
Yeah.
Build a solid foundation before we can face those bigger challenges.
Right. And just there are different styles of martial arts, right? You've got your judo, karate, kung fu, whatever.
Absolutely.
There are different parenting styles too, which can feel really overwhelming sometimes.
It is.
How do you choose the right style, or is there even such a thing as a right style for you?
Well, and that's, I think, where these books get really interesting, because what they're arguing is, instead of getting caught up in the latest parenting trends or, seeking quick sameness for specific problems, it's much more effective to kind of develop this core set of principles.
Okay.
Almost like your own personal parenting philosophy that can guide you through a variety of situations.
Okay. So it's about building a flexible parenting game almost.
Yeah.
One that can adapt to whatever your kids are throwing at you.
Exactly. Which, as we know, is always changing.
Always changing, yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings us to some of the specific techniques that these books kind of borrow from the world of martial arts.
Okay.
One that really resonated with me is this concept of staying in the pocket.
Okay. Now, I'll admit, my martial arts knowledge is mostly limited to watching Bruce Lee movies.
Okay.
So break this down for me. What exactly are we talking about when we say staying in the pocket?
So in martial arts, the pocket is that really intense zone of engagement.
Okay.
It's that close quarters combat where, the fight's often won or lost. Mm-hmm. And the fighters who really earn respect, are the ones who don't back down.
Right.
They stay present even when it gets tough, even when they're taking hits. They don't shy away from that challenge.
Okay, I love that image.
Yeah.
But how does that translate to parenting? Because I'm assuming we're not advocating for literal, brawls with our toddlers here. Right. Of course not. But But think about those heated moments that we all face as parents.
Oh, yeah.
Those arguments that escalate.
For sure.
The emotional meltdowns, the times when you just feel your own temper kind of flaring.
Mm-hmm.
And staying in the pocket in those situations means having the courage to stay fully engaged even when it's uncomfortable.
So instead of withdrawing, shutting down, or just like trying to escape the intensity of the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. We lean in, we stay present, we try to understand what's happening for our child, and we communicate with them, calmly and effectively.
Which sounds so simple in theory.
Right.
But I imagine it's so challenging to actually pull off in the heat of the moment.
It is. It is. But just like a fighter gains strength and skill.
Yeah.
By repeatedly stepping into that pocket.
Right.
We as parents can develop resilience and emotional intelligence by learning to navigate those tough moments without losing our cool.
So it's about retraining our reactions almost, like
Yes.
learning to respond instead of just reacting.
Exactly. Exactly. And the books offer some really interesting insights on how we can actually do that, borrowing techniques from the martial arts world.
Okay, this is getting good.
Yeah.
What other techniques can we kind of steal from the dojo and apply to this whole parenting thing?
Well, one that stands out is called the I method. And this is a training approach used in some martial arts gyms.
Okay.
Where students are given the basic tools and techniques,
Uh-huh.
but then they're encouraged to kind of problem solve in live sparring.
Oh, wow.
So they're figuring things out in real time.
So it's less about rote memorization and more about adaptability and like thinking on your feet.
Exactly. Exactly. And this has some fascinating parallels with parenting
Mm-hmm.
because, we can't control every aspect of our children's lives or, always tell them exactly what to do in every situation.
Right.
We need to give them the space to make their own choices, to learn from their mistakes,
Uh-huh.
to develop that same adaptability that's so crucial in martial arts.
And does that tie into this idea of like realistic training that you mentioned earlier?
Yes. Yes, it does. So in the martial arts, realistic training involves using controlled force to help each other improve.
Okay.
It's about providing honest feedback, pushing each other to get better, but always within a safe and supportive environment.
Okay, so how do we apply that concept of realistic training to parenting?
Well, it's about finding that balance between, providing guidance and support while also giving our kids the freedom to experiment, to make mistakes, to learn from their own experiences.
Uh-huh.
It's about offering constructive feedback, not harsh criticism.
Okay.
And remembering that growth often comes from overcoming challenges, not avoiding them altogether.
It sounds like a really delicate dance, though, to find that balance between, protecting our kids and preparing them to actually face the world.
It is, absolutely. And just like in martial arts, sometimes that means helping them unlearn old habits and retrain their responses.
Right.
The books talk about this concept of muscle memory, these ingrained patterns of behavior, both physical and emotional, that can be really difficult to break.
So when we're talking about that in the context of parenting, are we talking about retraining our kids' muscle memory or our own?
Well, I think it's both, actually.
Okay.
Our own childhood experiences, the way we were parented, can have a profound impact on how we interact with our own children.
Right. Like we might be unconsciously repeating patterns of behavior,
Yeah,
even if those patterns weren't healthy or effective to begin with.
exactly. And those ingrained patterns can show up in our communication styles, our emotional responses, even the way we discipline our kids.
So scary.
Yeah, but just like a fighter can retrain their muscle memory to execute a move more effectively,
Uh-huh.
we as parents can learn new, healthier ways to respond to our children.
Okay, so we're not doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past.
No, not at all. It takes effort and self-awareness, but it is possible to break those negative cycles and create, a more positive and supportive environment for our kids.
That's good news.
It is.
All right, I'm starting to see how this martial arts framework can be incredibly powerful for this whole parenting thing.
Yeah.
But how do we actually take these sort of abstract concepts and apply them to real life, tantrum throwing in the grocery store situations?
That's a great question. And that's where these books get even more insightful. They delve into specific techniques and strategies borrowed from the world of martial arts that we can use to navigate those everyday challenges of family life.
Well, in that case, we've got a lot more ground to cover.
We do.
So let's move on to the next point, which is, okay, so we talked about the importance of humility and building that, strong foundation. But what about some of the more specific techniques from martial arts that can be applied to parenting?
Yeah.
One of the most vivid analogies in these books is the triangle choke from Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
Now, full disclosure, my closest experience to a triangle choke is getting tangled in my own sheets, but the way these books connect it to setting boundaries is fascinating.
It is a powerful metaphor,
Yeah.
isn't it? You know, the key to the triangle choke is that your opponent needs to be at a specific distance
Okay.
for it to be effective.
Uh-huh.
Too close, and you don't have the leverage.
Okay.
Too far, and you can't reach them.
Right.
So it's about finding that optimal zone
Yeah.
where you can apply the technique.
I'm seeing the connection to parenting already.
Right.
Like, we want to be close enough to our kids to provide that support and guidance.
Yeah.
But not so close that we're, smothering them or preventing them from becoming independent.
Exactly. And the triangle choke analogy really highlights that delicate balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to find that sweet spot where we give our kids enough space to explore and grow,
Mm-hmm.
but not so much that they drift too far away or get into situations that they're not ready to handle.
So it's about setting those boundaries, not walls, but those clear lines that define what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah. And the books use this great visual of frames in Jiu-Jitsu to kind of illustrate this concept.
Okay.
So in Jiu-Jitsu, a frame is like a well-placed arm or leg.
Uh-huh.
That creates a barrier, a protective structure.
Okay.
It's not about, constantly using force,
Right.
but rather about establishing a clear boundary,
Like a guardrail.
exactly like a guardrail that prevents someone from falling off a cliff.
Okay. So it's about setting up those guardrails for our kids.
Yeah.
Those consistent, expectations and limits
Yeah.
that help them feel safe and secure
Yeah.
while still allowing them to develop their independence.
Precisely. And those clear boundaries, those well-placed frames,
Yeah.
they provide structure and guidance without feeling overly restrictive.
Right.
And this ties into this whole concept of control versus influence, which is a major theme in both books.
Okay.
When our kids are young, we naturally have more control over their behavior.
Right.
But as they grow older, that control gradually shifts to influence.
Right. You can't really force a teenager to do anything they don't want to do.
Exactly. We can't force teenagers to make the choices that we want them to make, but we can guide them, we can encourage them, and hopefully they'll take our advice to heart.
It's a tough transition for a lot of parents, though.
It is.
That letting go of control
Yeah.
and trusting our kids to actually make their own decisions.
It is, but these books really emphasize that it's a necessary part of the journey.
Okay.
Just like a fighter might adjust their own position, to create space or gain an advantage,
Mm-hmm.
we as parents need to adapt our approach as our kids mature and become more independent.
Okay.
We move from setting those firm boundaries
Right.
to offering guidance and support as they navigate their own path.
Okay, this whole triangle choke analogy is really starting to click for me now.
Good.
It's not about restricting our kids.
Right.
It's about providing that safe and supportive structure that allows them to flourish.
Yeah.
Are there other techniques or concepts from martial arts that these books highlight?
Definitely one that resonated with me is the emphasis on rhythm. Knowing when to fight and when to rest.
Yeah.
Even the most skilled martial artists need time to recover and recharge. They can't go full throttle all the time or they'll burn out.
Right.
And the book suggested parenting is no different.
Oh, yeah. Every parent knows that feeling of just being completely drained.
Oh, yeah.
Like you've just gone 12 rounds in the octagon.
Exactly. And both books really highlight the importance of recognizing those signs of burnout, both in ourselves and in our kids.
Okay.
It's about realizing that we need to tap out sometimes,
Yeah.
take a break and replenish our energy before we can get back in the game.
So it's not a sign of weakness to step back and take care of ourselves.
Not at all. In
Right.
fact, it's essential for our well-being and for the well-being of our kids.
Yeah.
Just like a fighter needs time to heal from injuries,
Right.
we as parents need to prioritize self-care, whether it's getting enough sleep,
Yeah.
eating well, exercising, or spending time doing things we enjoy. It allows us to be more present, more patient, and more effective parents.
And that applies to our kids too, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
They need that downtime
Yeah.
to decompress and recharge.
Just because they're not adults doesn't mean they don't experience stress and exhaustion.
Right.
Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our kids is to give them the space to simply be, to play, to unwind, to reconnect with themselves.
It's about recognizing that everyone needs a timeout sometimes.
Yes. And another interesting point the books make is that sometimes pulling back doesn't mean you're not a fighter anymore.
Oh, that's good.
Sometimes it's the most strategic move you could make.
I love that.
Yeah.
So stepping back, taking a breather, it's not giving up.
Right.
It's part of the overall strategy. It
Yeah.
allows us to, gather ourselves, reassess the situation, and come back stronger.
Exactly. And this applies to dealing with challenging behaviors from our kids, too.
Okay.
Sometimes disengaging from a heated argument or power struggle can be more effective than trying to force our will. It gives everyone a chance to calm down, regroup, and approach the situation with a fresh perspective.
Both books also address that common fear that we all have the fear of starting something new, whether it's stepping onto the mat for the first time or having that difficult conversation with our child.
Right.
How do we overcome those anxieties and take that first step?
Well, one key takeaway is to focus on the present moment.
Okay.
Don't get bogged down by what ifs or future worries. Just take that first step, then the next, and celebrate those small victories along the way.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the enormity of the task, we break it down into those manageable steps.
Exactly. And remember, growth often comes from stepping outside of our comfort zones.
So embrace the discomfort.
In a way, yes, it's about acknowledging those fears, but not letting them paralyze us. And both books emphasize the importance of finding a supportive community. People who understand the challenges, who can offer encouragement and advice, who can remind us that we're not alone in this journey.
It's like having a team of training partners.
Exactly.
Who are there to support you, push you, and celebrate your wins.
Exactly. And that sense of community can make all the difference in the world, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed or discouraged.
So it's about finding those other martial artist parents in the arena.
Yeah.
Those people who get it, who can share their experiences and offer a helping hand when you're feeling tapped out.
It makes the journey a lot less daunting and a lot more enjoyable when you have that support system.
Right, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from staying in the pocket to setting those frames or boundaries to remembering to tap out and take care of ourselves. But both books also delve into some deeper emotional territory, right?
Do they address the importance of facing our own past experiences, our own wounds and insecurities as part of becoming more effective parents?
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Are we talking therapy on the mat now?
Not necessarily therapy, but both books acknowledge that the way we were parented, those early childhood experiences, can have a profound impact on how we parent our own children.
Right, like we might unconsciously repeat patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
Even if those patterns weren't healthy or effective, it's like stepping into the arena with an old injury that hasn't fully healed.
And those unresolved issues, those emotional wounds from the past, can make it really difficult to stay present, to regulate our emotions, and to respond to our kids in a way that's both loving and effective.
So what's the antidote? How do we address those old wounds and prevent them from, sabotaging our efforts to be the best parents we can be?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of this deep dive.
Ooh, cliffhanger.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back and things are about to get deep, as we promised.
That's right.
We've been unpacking all these really fascinating parallels between martial arts and parenting, but now we're getting into, I think, the heart of it, which is how our own past experiences, those old wounds that we all carry, can impact the way we show up as parents.
Yeah, it's like stepping into the arena with a hidden injury, isn't it?
Right.
We might not even realize how those past experiences are influencing our reactions.
Yeah.
Our triggers, the way we communicate with our kids.
And both books suggest that acknowledging those hidden injuries is really crucial.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Right.
Are we talking therapy journaling? Intense self-reflection?
Well, all of those can be really helpful tools, absolutely. But I think the core message I'm getting from these books is about cultivating self-awareness.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to our reactions.
Yeah.
Noticing those moments when we feel triggered or overwhelmed and just asking ourselves, what's really going on here?
So it's about pausing, taking a breath, and trying to understand the root of our reactions rather than just reacting impulsively.
Exactly. It's like a martial artist, studying their opponent's moves, trying to anticipate their next attack. By understanding our own emotional patterns, those ingrained reactions that we've developed over time, we can start to choose, different, more skillful responses.
And that's where the real growth happens, right?
Well, exactly.
It's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending we don't have those triggers, but about learning to manage them more effectively.
Precisely. And just like a martial artist might spend years honing a particular technique, becoming more precise, more efficient, more impactful.
Yeah.
We can work on refining our own emotional responses. Becoming more patient, more understanding, more empathetic parents.
Both books also really emphasize, I think, the importance of self-compassion in this process.
Absolutely.
It's not about beating ourselves up for our mistakes or feeling like failures, but about recognizing that we're all, works in progress.
We're all learning as we go. And just like a martial arts instructor wouldn't expect a beginner, to perform flawlessly on their first day,
Right.
we need to extend that same grace and understanding to ourselves as parents.
So it's okay to mess up. It's okay to have those moments where we lose our cool or react in a way that we're not proud of.
It's not only okay, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're all human. What matters is that we learn from those experiences.
Right.
That we make a conscious effort to do better next time.
And that's where that martial arts mindset comes in again, right?
Exactly.
It's that commitment to continuous improvement.
Yes.
That dedication to honing our skills, both physical and emotional.
You get parenting, like martial arts, is a lifelong journey of learning and growth.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a new technique to master a new challenge, to overcome a new level of skill to achieve.
And by embracing that mindset, by approaching parenting with the same intentionality and discipline that a martial artist brings to their training,
Right.
we can not only become, I think, more effective parents, but we can also model that resilience and that growth mindset for our kids.
Absolutely. It's about showing them that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to struggle, that what matters most is that we keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to be the best versions of ourselves.
This whole deep dive has been truly eye-opening.
It is fascinating stuff, isn't it?
I'm starting to see parenting in a whole new light. It's not just about keeping tiny humans alive and fed,
Right.
but it's about this incredible opportunity for personal growth, for self-discovery, and for building those really deep, meaningful connections with our kids.
Yeah. It's a privilege and an adventure, isn't it? And by borrowing wisdom from unexpected sources like the world of martial arts, we can equip ourselves with the tools and the mindset we need to navigate the challenges and celebrate the joys of this incredible journey.
So as we wrap up this exploration of parenting as a martial art, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What's one small step you can take today to approach parenting with maybe more intentionality, more self-awareness, or even a little more of that black belt spirit,
Yeah.
It could be anything from taking 5 minutes to breathe and center yourself before responding to a challenging behavior to committing to exploring one of the techniques we've discussed in more depth, whatever it is. Remember, you don't have to be a martial arts master to be a phenomenal parent.
That's right.
You just have to show up, be present, and keep learning as you go.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of martial artist parents out there ready to support you, encourage you, and cheer you on. So go out there, embrace the challenge, and keep fighting the good fight.
I love it. Thanks for joining me for another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.